Convey apologies from Ms. Pam Christie. Those of you that are following everything that's sort of happening in TAFE at the moment, unfortunately she's been called to a very urgent meeting and is unable to join us today. But she's obviously as you would all be aware, she's the Managing Director of TAFE New South Wales, but importantly too, she's the Chair of the BVET Associate Degree of Accounting Project Steering Committee. Pam was really integral in making the associate degrees actually come to fruition, and I'm sure that she would much rather be here today to talk about the actual program. But that's actually that will be my responsibility, so I'm going to be talking on behalf of Pam today. So, we were expecting her, you can see that. So basically what we're going to talk about today is with the Tertiary Pathways, I'm going to actually focus on 3 areas. And I thought I was, but maybe not. Yes, I am. Okay, so basically I'm going to talk about the Tertiary Pathway program. I'm going to talk about the background and the context, and in that I'll just provide a short history of TAFE New South Wales higher education, including the development of the concept of the Tertiary Pathway program to implementation, remembering that the Associate Degree of Accounting is not the only Tertiary Pathway program we now have for TAFE Higher Ed. In the next part, I'm going to actually provide you with some the data and how we've actually collected the data and the analysis that we've actually undertaken. This is the work that we've been conducting in the TAFE Higher Ed unit, and we've been very focused on the course performance reporting framework, and what we've gathered is some data around the Associate Degree of Accounting compared to our other courses that we're offering in TAFE Higher Ed, because some of the, I suppose the analysis is actually drawing us in a certain direction. It's a little bit hard to say conclusions, but we're certainly working that way. And then the last one, obviously, is the next phase, where do we go to now? You know, we're a couple of years in now to TAFE Higher Ed, and the Associate Degree of Accounting is one of the flagship courses, and we will have students graduating at the end of this semester. So what's the next step? So without further ado, I will provide you with the overview. So today we are still seeing the impacts of the global economic crisis. The challenge for Australia is to remain obviously globally competitive in a challenging world economy. To keep the economy strong, we need people in employment and people with higher level skills. Over the past years, there has been great discussion and debate about how to get greater participation in higher education, including very specifically about how to engage people from low socio-economic backgrounds. Obviously, TAFE has always been focused on building educational pathways, and there has always been a strong commitment to ensuring that education and training that is provided leads to real employment outcomes. So, there's been a lot of discussion about the different pathway approaches, and Professor Sheridan also provided some of that today, and as well Peter's opening address, and also the barriers to increased participation. Traditionally, the model had previously focused on articulation and credit transfer arrangements, and I know that some of the Institute Higher Ed coordinators are in the room today, and I'm sure that they would share with me the difficulty and the absolute time that's needed to actually keep those arrangements in place. So we needed to look at a different model. Because they're so complex, they're difficult to negotiate for students, and there is a disincentive, particularly for students who do not consider university available to them. So if they're not sort of considering how do they get to university, articulation arrangements can be difficult for students. If students who would normally have thought of gaining a vocational qualification are to be attracted to university, the pathways will need to be considerably more seamless than they are at present. So, one of the things that we've obviously been talking about this morning is a range of different pathway programs. There's obviously, we have the VET to higher education, but we've also got integrated programs. Thanks to Sarah, she's brought up about integrated programs, but I think talking to different people in the room, there are quite a few integrated programs that have been in existence for quite a long time. And what I might just point to is that one of the challenges that an integrated program can actually pose is the logistical challenges, particularly if students are studying at different institutions. And it's also the pressure that's placed on students, who often our students in higher education are trying to support themselves through some form of employment. So the workload that's actually involved in trying to negotiate to institutions and what their particular needs are can prove quite difficult. And also, of course, students do actually progress, but a lot of our students do experience that there are barriers to that. The franchising or auspicing arrangements have grown in recent time. You'll see here at SWSi there's quite a lot of I suppose material here showing the different arrangements that are in place, and that's actually due to the current demand-driven funding model and the uncapped places that universities actually have. And we know that it's a new model, and lots of our institutes are taking on that model, but it's about the future of that and how long-term that would be. It's a bit early to say how successful that's actually been, but certainly it has grown dramatically. TAFE New South Wales became a higher ed provider in 2010, and we've increased from enrolments for one course and one delivery site in 23 enrolments in the first intake in 2011 to 772 currently in 2014. So you can see that the growth in that short period of time has been quite enormous, and with that, the support that's actually surrounding that is also quite challenging. So there are 8 degree programs. Peter alluded to the different ones, but there's also more degree programs that are actually underway. So let me just talk to you about the tertiary pathway model, and this is actually when TAFE Higher Ed actually started to look at this model. It was looking at some research that had been undertaken with models that were in place overseas, particularly in the US and the UK, that had an integrated pathway from VET to higher education, and the research showed that there was considerable success in engaging students from particularly diverse communities and disadvantaged backgrounds. So the models, obviously, it involves going from the associate degree level with VET and then actually moving through to the university. I won't go into too many features. I think you'll see it's you can see from the year 1, the year 2 is with TAFE New South Wales, and then the years 3 and then sometimes for year 4 would be undertaken with direct entry to the university to complete the bachelor degree. Some of the important features is really about what I mentioned previously about the difficulty negotiating the credit transfer and articulation arrangements. This particular model shows real clarity for the students of entering into one of our participating university partners, and obviously with ACU and Macquarie Uni being the Metro Sydney who offer the face-to-face, but we've also got those distance deliveries, which has got UNE and Charles Sturt. We've talked about the greater flexibility for students, particularly as students move in and out of education and their circumstances change. It actually offers different exit and entry points, and one of the other higher ed programs that we do have, the Bachelor of 3D Art and Animation, there is an exit point of an associate degree. It's a different model from the tertiary pathway program, but there is different models being put in place and being trialled. So we've talked quite a bit about the student flexibility, so I'll just go back and just sort of talk about one of the real driving points to actually put the tertiary pathway program into place was really trying to target students that previously were not considering university as an option. It was really trying to think, how do we engage those students, because often it's due to their educational backgrounds, what's considered in their families, their family backgrounds, and also just whether or not they're in a regional or metropolitan area. A lot of our regional and remote students still have that whole difficulty about trying to access higher education. So, obviously the course builds on the necessary skills of research, analysis, problem solving and essay writing, but the course has been developed with industry to ensure that the graduates are work ready and highly employable. It's a real strength for this particular model that we had a strong partnership with CPA Australia and also IPSA, the Industry Skills Council, so that our graduates had an excellent reputation and success in employment. And we had the participating universities, we had a strong support from industry as well as the Industry Skills Council, and then of course we were leveraging off a very strong TAFE New South Wales brand. The career opportunities for students who might exit after the associate degree, we have worked closely with industry to ensure the program addresses the skill needs of these occupations, particularly with the associate degree level being a paraprofessional level. So that's a snapshot of the Tertiary Pathway program, but the other one that we have actually in existence from the beginning of this year was the Associate Degree of Applied Engineering Renewable Energy Technologies. And we're very pleased to say that enrolments have actually happened at 2 of our campuses. So what we're expecting is once that particular course is up and going, that we'll be able to do some benchmarking between the 2. So that's the background. So let me give you some stats. Okay. So these are the course enrolments, and as I said previously, remembering that we're still in the very early days. We started commencement of the Associate Degree of Accounting in 2012, and we're expecting our first graduates to be at the end of semester 2, 2013. So this particular one shows an overview of the enrolments over the past years, and what you might actually look at, which I thought was very interesting, is that if you consider that 2014 statistics are only for semester 1, they're not for the whole year, whereas the other 2 years are actually for the full year. What we would be expecting is that it's usually a split, as most of you know when you're doing your planning, between the 60 and 40%. So it's certainly growing, but there's still some challenges that we need to sort of identify. How do we continually to grow this student cohort? The next one that might be of interest is the student profile in with gender. This graph shows the comparison by percentage, this is by percentage and not numbers, of male to female. It's a fairly even split, and we would see that there's a slightly higher proportion of males to females compared to the overall course profiles, higher number of females, and that's particularly due to some of the courses that we're actually offering. The IT Network Security course is probably predominantly male, whereas our Bachelor of Early Childhood Education and Care Birth to 5 is predominantly female. So it's balancing out. You know, we're not sort of saying that we're favouring, but it will need to go down, further drilling down as we go through it. So this is the student profile, the background. What you'll see here, which is of interest, we're looking at the entry, where the student's actually coming from. And one of the things that we've just identified is obviously the very high proportion of Year 12 or equivalent. What we need to do is to drill down into that a bit further, because I think what we will see is that it's not Year 12, it's actually a lot of people coming in with diplomas through the vet pathway. So we need to drill down a little bit further to that. And I think what we're sort of seeing is that students are actually choosing to stay in the TAFE environment, being supportive, being used to the actual campus, being used to the teachers, and many of our teachers teach over the vet and the higher ed program. Now, interestingly, with NESB, there's a very high proportion for ADA in comparison to all courses. So it really poses the question I would put to you is, what strategies can we put in place to actually meet the needs of that particular student cohort? Having a large NESB I suppose group within our largest groups, largest student cohort, we need to really think very seriously about that. And I think one of the things that really came home to me when I looked at this was the ATSI, just the very low proportion of students that we have with Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander background. When we consider that in 2011 we had 14%, like 34,000 ATSI students in our vet programs, there's obviously we're missing something there about trying to engage our ATSI students in moving into higher education. So for us in the higher ed unit, that's probably going to be a focus for us, and I think we need to really take notice of that. One of the things that I thought was really of interest is the high proportion of university graduates, which is higher in the ADA than for other courses. So what does that actually mean if we're really trying to think about, here's the stats, what analysis, what can we draw from it, and what would motivate a student to actually come and do a higher ed program at TAFE when they've already got a university degree? And I think again we need to drill down further what have they actually completed, but I think it also begs the question about, is there a different support that we need for those students that are actually entering from, that have already developed those academic writing, academic research skills? What does that actually mean? So student attrition and progression, what you'll see is the student attrition remains pretty steady at 15% for ADA, but what is of significance there is it's actually more than double than all of the rest of our courses. So this is actually based on our pre and post census data, but saying that, we're still saying that it's fairly steady, but it's still a high proportion that we've actually got students actually withdrawing out of the ADA. So of course this is early days, and the importance of building the profile will assist us with identifying effective screening, support mechanisms, intervention strategies, and I think too a refocus on learning styles. I think it's, you know, one of the things thinking about the high proportion of uni students within the ADA, what does that mean? And if we are really looking at people coming in from the vet pathway and we're still seeing a very high dropout rate, what is that all going to mean for us? I think one of the things that we need to really have a good look at too is about, it's about also how do we support our academic staff to actually support the students within the programs that we're actually looking at. And we're obviously looking quite a lot at our TAFE Higher Education Moodle and looking at blended delivery, and some of our courses now are actually considering Adobe Connect when we're really trying a very, I suppose we're trying to refocus on blended delivery and how can we do that better. And it's not about the savings or the efficiencies that we can actually implement through that. It's about the learning experience and how can we actually engage and motivate and connect and make sure that students are getting a really rich learning environment. We all know that technology is here, so how can we leverage off that within what we're actually looking at? So the next phase, so I suppose that's probably just some other indicators that we're actually looking at. I just wanted to very briefly talk about, you know, the overall pass rate is fairly similar. What we're also focusing on is the student surveys. We haven't actually had a lot of ADA students actually completing surveys, so we don't know a lot about what their experience is. So what we need to do is work a bit smarter on actually gathering that information. We get a lot of information that's anecdotal through our course coordinators, through our Institute Higher Ed coordinators, but we also need to look at how are we documenting it, and then what are we doing to support or responding to any issues that are being raised. And we certainly do that through our teaching and learning committees, but I think if we look at the overall satisfaction, you know, we've got some really high percentages there across all of the higher ed programs, but what would be really good is for us to be able to track that student journey of our ADA students, because now we're getting to the point where the ADA students are just about, we're having a student cohort completing this semester. We need to be able to say, okay, what was good about that experience? What can we do to improve on it? And we're doing lots of an analysis, and we're really trying hard to put some strategies in place. So some of the things that we have identified, and I say this in preparation for this afternoon and thinking about what we might be able to do, is that we're really focused on, and I think this is really interesting because it echoes a lot of what Professor Sheridan was saying, was about the readiness for higher education, it's about the academic skills, and I think one of the other things too is that we need to know more about our students. We all talk about that they come from diverse backgrounds. We can't actually say this is what a TAFE higher ed student is about because they are so diverse. But then what does that mean for our teaching practice? What are we actually doing to address all of those different styles, the learning styles that need to be addressed? So I think the profiling helps. I think, you know, we're uncovering a story. And some of the things that we're looking at an overall level as far as course enhancements are concerned is that one of the things we have is, at the moment for ADA, we have 11 campuses actually accredited, but we're only delivering out of 5, and they're really situated in the metropolitan areas. So what's actually happening when we know that accounting is still a skill shortage in a lot of our regional areas, there's still really high employment opportunities in our regional areas for accounting, but why aren't we attracting the students? And I think one of the things that we've been talking about is obviously the blended delivery, but I think it's also trying to do that promotion and that advertising. A lot of the feedback that we've got is that students are not aware what an associate degree is. What is it about? Because it's a different model, that it's a different course that we're actually providing within our TAFE higher ed space. Students are very au fait with diplomas, advanced diplomas, certificates. They're okay with bachelor degrees, but what is it about an associate degree? Why would I do an associate degree? And what is actually happening at a very high state level is that the TAFE New South Wales, they're revitalising the branding for TAFE New South Wales, and TAFE New South Wales Higher Education will figure very prominently as a sub-brand, which we need to really think about. I think the other thing too that, that we do need to focus on also is about the benchmarking, the validation and the moderation, and I think, you know, we need to leverage off our partners. We can certainly start looking at it now that we're sort of getting students through the whole course, but I think there's some opportunities that we need to really focus on. So we know people facing disadvantage do not always transition to university as successfully as others, and we also identify that there's some challenges ahead, but we are optimistic that this pathway model in accounting will benefit students, providing an alternative supported pathway into university. We just need to work closer with our local groups, do some networking, and just get the word out there about what is the benefits of actually completing an associate degree. So that's me in a nutshell.